Got Cody Winters on today. Cody and I have been buddies for a couple years. One of the things I love about him is his willingness to just say, I don't know where I'm at. I'm still figuring it out. And it seems like that just spurs some cool conversations. And so I was excited to have him on here. I think you guys will like it. And we are live. Wow. So now that means people can tune in and listen to whatever you say, good or bad. Cody Winters today. If you guys that haven't or just new to this that are kind of catching up on the idea, I at a selfish level and just enjoying getting to know people in the church better. Like having people come through, young guys that are a part of what we're doing. We've had people with military backgrounds. We've had people like Jason that works the cattle deal and the shoot deal, and Chris on the side. Like it's literally been a cool opportunity just to sit down and talk about literally whatever. So thanks for jumping on here.
Yeah, of course.
You and I have been friends now for, I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer to this. So you walk me through the timeline from zero to here as far as I met you here, right? Here at the church, probably.
Someone asked me how I met you and how we first started hanging out, and I can't remember the exact time.
Somebody said there was a group of kids from Bend, and then that was all I knew. And then I think it was Grant that had a class. Some sort of a class where he's supposed to do some sort of volunteer, right?
Yeah, I did for sure. Grant and I both, no, Max and I did.
Okay, so
maybe
there's two
Grant
ways.
did first.
It was Grant and Jack, I think, first.
Yeah.
And I think because there was two, and then the next time it was you and Max, right? Yeah. And so the class was what?
Some business class. We had to do 20 hours of community service, and you guys were on the list.
And so you guys had already you guys connected to the church by then already.
Yeah, Jack's parents.
They're the first ones that got here.
And then we came, because they have a house of Brasada, and then we came here.
Gotcha.
Fell in love.
And so when did there's like watch parties or something in Bend. Was it 2 years ago somewhere? Am I guessing? Like 2.5, 3 years ago?
2 summers ago. Not this past summer, but the summer before.
Gotcha. And so you weren't raised in Central Oregon. You got here for college, right? And so you were raised
straight out of high school, Gresham, Oregon.
So we've got a lot of people from that part of the world. It seems like everybody we've talked to, the one thing that everybody has in common is everybody knows Jason. Jason is like the Kevin Bacon. He's the connection point to everyone because he grew up in Sandy. And so from after high school, you guys came over to this part of the country for what? Just to go to school?
To ski. School was here, but we came here to ski.
And when you say to ski, that's not like the average person saying skiing, because like to me, the average person who skis is like Karen with 2 kids and like the minivan and like a nice little day up on the mountain. But you've got a like pretty extensive background skiing.
Yep.
We'll get to Luke and all that, but like where did you start? How old were you when you started skiing?
2 years old.
God, that's crazy.
Could barely walk.
Did you feel like you took to it really quick because of how young you were when you started?
Yeah. My dad, crazy story, but my dad was in the same spot I was here in college in Central Oregon skiing.
What?
Yeah. Same thing. Was till 23 when he started his business. Now I'm trying to start a business. Same exact thing. Crazy.
That's awesome.
But my dad got in skiing here, skied for the college, and then when we were born, he just started going skiing. Then we fell in love with it, started racing.
How many kids in your family? There's you, Luke.
Twin brother and 2 sisters. One's 2 years older, one's 2 years younger.
There's Luke, Cody, Demi.
Cassidy.
Gotcha. And so you and your brother the ski, like I said, I don't even know where to start that story. You started when you were 2, but like obviously it took off into what would obviously has bloomed into a career for your brother. But like what was the trajectory on that? Did you guys know pretty early on that was what you wanted to do?
Yeah. We started skiing, started ski racing, and it turned into like every weekend deal, taking the motorhome up to ski bowl and sleeping in the motorhome. Jason actually knows, we know the same people, John Vermis and people who,
of course,
crazy, small world. But we started doing that, and then it's quickly turned into more of like this is what we're going to do. This is our dream.
How old were you when like the lights came on for you that's what you wanted to do?
I don't know, 7 years old.
Oh, really?
I remember having skis that, I don't know if you guys know Bodie Miller, but we had skis that said Bodie on them. We always said we're going to be like Bodie and stuff like that.
So okay, I'm getting my details all mixed up, but you guys went to like an academy or something for it, right?
Yeah. So we started ski racing, got more serious. We were good at it. And then in 7th grade, I'm actually wearing the hat, Mount Hood Academy. We started going to Mount Hood Academy in the 7th grade. So we'd play football in the fall, and then go ski from like November till April, move back to middle school or wherever we were at, play baseball.
So Mount Hood Academy was an actual school. Like it was a full-on
Yeah.
go-to-class school.
It was supposed to be, yeah.
Right.
We didn't do much school.
That's like most academies, I think, that are
Yeah.
structured towards a sport.
Now it's great. Now, I mean, I'm wearing their hat. They've come a long ways, but
Yeah. So you skied up until when? Because you live in a house now. We'll get to all this. I mean, there's a lot of it I don't know.
yeah.
You ended up over here living in a house with. I want to get back to from Ski Academy to here in just a second. But you ended up living over here with how many guys?
4 or 3 guys.
3 guys.
4 including me.
Again, and how did that all come about? Because you guys, we're gonna get to the keep the stoke alive stuff too. I'm so curious. I don't know the
Promotion.
timeline.
This
I don't
is
know
why I'm here.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me about your thing you're doing. But I don't know how this all progressed. So you're from the Ski Academy, graduate high school. At that point, are you kind of thinking you're done with skiing, or is it something you're wanting to continue to do?
Yeah. I mean, senior year, I could have skied in the East Coast probably, but I don't know, kind of fell out of it. When you're that serious about something, you're either
Kind of all in or
full
out.
go or out, and it was super expensive sport. So I said, I'm done. Grant was already here with Jack, having a ton of fun. So I said, I'm going to go have fun. And
Right. And
Central
Luke, your
Oregon
brother,
and ski. Yeah. Luke,
what did he do?
Twin. He made NTG, this thing, National Training Group. It's no longer, it's like a step down from the U.S. ski team, and he just kept skiing and never went to school.
He never questioned it. Like he knew that's what he wanted.
Yeah. I mean, he was just the next level, so he didn't have to question it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for you, that was kind of I'm just going to go a different route.
Yeah.
How much of a life change is that? I mean, because it's something
Huge
you've
life
always
change.
done. You've done since you were 2.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the recovery time on that? Like, when do you feel like that you finally? I talked to Brooke Buswell the other day. She was talking about basketball. When she got hurt, like basketball was over, and it had been such a big part of her life. It seems like on the back end of kind of a season ending, there's almost like a well. It's like kind of this lost feeling. I feel like that's where young people tend to struggle the most, is when something ends and something else hasn't begun yet. So like as far as a life change goes, how was it?
It was fine for me. I'm kind of blessed. I don't really get in those like slumps. I just was like, turn the corner and here's my next road and going. So, I mean, I had 3 buddies and we were still skiing 6 days a week, just like before.
Where
Lucky
if somebody
that I was able to do that, but we were skiing just as much as I was before, just not for
without the
training,
stress.
without
Right.
the stress. And
Do you think you liked skiing more like that than you like? It's more fun for me to go ride a young horse and practice and hang out with my buddies, and like the practice program for me is way more fun than competing.
yeah,
And it hasn't always been that way, but it is now.
yeah.
Did you feel like it's for you, like when you're just out skiing with your buddies, it was better?
Oh, absolutely. That's
That'd be
probably
fun,
why
man.
I didn't go as far as I did, because we screwed off so much.
So, trying to think how to ask that. Did you feel like that did it help feeling like that you chose it instead of like being forced out? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'm like, man, what would happen if I stuck with it? But
that's just
my
part of
brain,
being young,
my
though.
brain doesn't really.
Yeah.
Luckily, I don't go there that much.
So Luke now is doing what? Like, what is his?
He's working on the ranch right now.
Luke is? Because everything's shut down.
Yeah, everything's shut down.
But before that, you guys just got back from, where was it? You got the whole group. Like, one of the coolest things about your story is how tight you guys are.
Yeah.
Like, you and your house group just went to where?
Austria and Switzerland, Germany, to watch my brother ski race. Mainly just to ski, because we've never been there and it's always been a dream.
But to go watch him is a good
yeah,
excuse.
to watch him. So Luke's racing World Cup on the U.S. ski team, one of the top American skiers.
That's awesome. So if somebody wanted to go, because when you say skiing, obviously I think people are probably getting the idea that it's not like I said, Karen with her 2 kids on the day
Yeah.
off. If somebody wanted to go watch you do backflips, where do they find? Like, it's on your Instagram page, isn't it?
Yeah, not that much, but yeah, Instagram, YouTube, keep the stoke alive.
So you're over here going to school. That's kind of where we met. You were still in school, but that was starting to wind down.
Yep.
And there was kind of the thought that you may go back. Like, you may go back to Gresham, right?
Yeah.
Like, you were kind of weighing what that would look like.
Yeah, still doing that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And so you decided, at the time being, you're going to stay here.
Yeah.
While you were here, you, Jack, Grant, and Max started what? What's it called? Keep Stoked Alive.
Stoke alive, yeah.
What is that? Obviously it's
it's kind of dying out now. We're getting to the stage of life where careers are taking over and we're not able to go ski 6 days a week and screw around on the mountain and make do stupid stuff.
Well, but it didn't seem like it was made to last forever. It was kind of like you guys were just documenting that phase of life, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We were pretty lucky. We got to stay in Jack's parents' house on Broken Top. So we paid $200 a month and lived in this amazing house. So we were sitting in that house, didn't have jobs, going to school. Luckily, I mean, we're very lucky people. But so we said, what can we do? And we just started filming everything, called it Keep the Stoke Alive. And it was something that got us out more because then we wanted to get more content footage for these videos and stuff. And then it turned into like a 3-year deal where we released episodes like monthly, or last year we did just one big episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Celebrities in the city of Bend, Oregon.
I don't know about that.
What didn't you guys do something at the Tower Theater? Wasn't there like a...
Oh, that was just this bike shop put on like a fundraiser, and people entered videos, and it sold out. I mean, a lot of people saw it, but lots of other videos were there too.
So what does that look like now? Because you're graduated. That phase of like your buddies living in a house skiing every day was awesome. I mean, that for the rest of your life, you're going to have that.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about starting an excavating company.
Yeah.
You're moving into kind of what? I mean, what's the next phase going to look like for the next, what's the 5-year plan, Cody?
I don't have a 5-year plan. I have like a tomorrow plan.
What's your tomorrow plan?
Might go to the ranch. No, but I don't, life's changing a lot.
Yeah.
Today it snowed 2 feet last night, and all I wanted to do was go ski, but
yeah,
bills to pay, stuff like that.
Well, in the mount, you're saying, I'm not sure if we're supposed to talk about that. There's places you could find to ski if a guy wanted to, hypothetically.
Yeah, my roommates are skiing right now.
Yeah. So, if you don't mind, I mean, you can tell me like you don't want to talk about it, or you do. Safe words Oklahoma will change the subject. But like, do you feel like that this is the first time in your life that it's kind of unclear? I mean, is it?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And
absolutely.
What little time I've known you, you've always been like, you've got this thing about you that wherever you are, it feels like that's where things are happening. You know, like as far as I've ever been around, like when Cody's present, that's kind of, there's an energy that you carry with you. And so when you said you don't like really stress out about changing plans, you just kind of turn the corner and there you go. Like you wear that externally. People that know you would see that. Like to know Cody is to know like fun, fun loving, happy.
Too much fun sometimes.
Well, but that's kind of part of the story.
Yeah.
So do you feel like what we're talking about is identity, things that you just naturally carry with you.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that you're as you're sorting this out, does it feel like that's changing, or do you feel like that you're just sort of in a holding pattern, still getting it? I'm not asking this correctly. That fun energy that you've always carried your whole life, does it feel like that's harder now to carry all of a sudden while you're trying to figure it out?
No, I mean, I'm just, the only thing that's changing is like lifestyle, like skiing, and I mean, I still ski a ton, but I wasn't able to wake up this morning and go ski.
Well, at 23, like you're still pretty young. It's fair. It's
22.
Fair.
I turned 23 Thursday.
Still, so that even more so. Like at 22, like you don't expect that at 22 anymore. You don't expect that a guy's ready to start like giving up on things that are fun and really digging into a career. So where does that come from? Because in the time, like the last 6 months, you've mentioned it, like wanting to start your own excavating company, working for Neil, working with Colton and those guys. Like work is always, it's funny to me that you would think that somebody in your position, work wouldn't be as high on the priority scale. Like, in fact, it feels like we almost, as a society, we almost applaud people who put that off as long as they can. Mm-hmm. So what is it in your life that's causing you to have this desire to like get started and get rolling on the next phase?
I don't know what it is. Part of me wants to just drop everything and go be a surf instructor in Australia or something. I was surf instructor in Costa Rica for like a month in my last term of college, but part of me wants to drop everything, but I feel like that's just kind of selfish. If I want to be, I don't know. When I see myself in 10 years, I see like a family and stuff like that. And
it's a weird one because there is that knee jerk to, like you said, go be a surf instructor in Australia, and some people make a career out of that.
Oh,
like,
for sure.
I mean, it's not a complete dead end. Yeah. But like you said, if you stick with it too long, just kind of cutting bait and going and doing other stuff, there does come a point where like everybody passes you. We talked about this a couple days ago. Like everybody passes you, and you're the one that didn't really like take the exit, so to speak, and then you're behind. Yeah,
which I have some friends who are like really succeeding, but I don't know.
As a surf instructor?
No. I'm saying in like careers and stuff like that. Not that I'm not, but
right. Well, and you had the option to go back and work for your dad, right?
Still do, yeah. Yeah, that's like a hard decision that I'm trying to figure out.
Because you're wanting to stay here in Central Oregon.
I love Central Oregon. Yeah. I told my dad if I ever move home, I'm not moving home until I'm married.
Yeah. Any progress on that?
Nope. That information's confidential.
So if a guy's watching this and kind of figuring it out, because I feel like I went through this. The rodeo world is this way. The ministry world, not so much. But it's funny because I don't feel like I was raised in the ministry culture at all. Like I was my dad, I'm sure at some point he's going to watch this. My dad wanted me to go to Southwestern Assemblies of God University. And I said, absolutely not, under no circumstances. You could not drag me there. Not interested, because culturally I just felt so disconnected. Well, now those guys, it's been like applauded to like go on and become, go in the ministry and find a job and career and things like that in the ministry field. And I thought that I was going to avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
The rodeo world, now, I'm 37. Like if I would have stayed too long there, you start to become like the guy who's still going to the high school parties that's like 27. It's like, I think you missed your exit. So, that's not even really a form of a question, but like, it's important to you, even if you don't have it figured out right now, it's important to you that you have some sort of a plan. Like that you're wanting to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah. I don't have a plan, but I don't think, it's not my plan at all. It's God's plan, but I think there's actions I can take, just like you said, there's arrows I can shoot that would probably be smart.
Yeah.
At this time in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in youth, it's weird to think of youth as an opportunity, but youth is an opportunity. It's a huge advantage.
Yeah.
The earlier you start anything, the more of an advantage it becomes later.
Yeah.
So like with you, because most of our conversations have been about like our walk with God, because I know that the questions that Cody asks are frustrating because they're thought out. Like one of my least favorite things is when you'll shoot me a question on Instagram, because it's never just like, is Jesus good or bad? Like that. It's always something like you had a friend recently who asked a question. And I won't repeat the question because I don't want to feel like we're talking about it. But the questions that you ask are always deeper than just the surface type stuff.
Yeah.
So obviously your walk with God means something to you.
Oh, for sure.
And so as you're trying to figure it out, what does that look like? In your mind, do you think that God's going to sort of lay it out and you can walk into it no matter what? Do you feel like he's waiting for you to figure it out? What's your opinion on how does your walk with God play into this season while you're trying to figure it out?
I'm not like I'm one of the guys, I think people hear God's voice differently, but I'm not a guy who like, oh, God told me this, God told me that. Like I struggle with like feeling the spirit or anything like that. So, of course I try to make decisions based off,
principles of who God is.
Yeah, exactly.
I tell you what, it's risky. Like even as a pastor of a church, it's weird for me to go, God told me X, Y, and Z, because you leave the door open for people to go, what did that sound like?
Yeah.
How do you know?
Yeah.
God talks to you. How does that work? They're asking for like concrete answers. And in my life, I don't hear God audibly. It's not like I have a speaker connected to him.
Yeah.
But the more I get to know him, the more I get to know his nature, the more I start to realize how answers come, like how you begin to understand, like, for instance, as we're going through everything that we're going through, like nationally, I look back and here's what's been happening for me. Just heads up. For about the last 2 years, Lacey and I have been having this conversation. I feel like God's preparing us for something. I feel like God's putting things together. I feel like God is like putting pieces together. And every time I try to connect them, he says no. This has been 2 years, Lace, something like that, of like, I feel like God's setting us up for something, but I don't know what. He's setting us up for something, but I don't know what. Okay, well, maybe we'll buy this. Nope, don't do that. Okay, nope, don't do that. And then all of a sudden, it's like when everything starts to kind of go like it's going in our nation right now, what I realize is God had it all put together. And hearing his voice was just being willing to say yes to what I saw him doing. Mm-hmm. It's not like he came down and he's like, okay, here's the plan. I'm going to do this and this and this. And I think that's when people are looking for an answer from God. That's what they're looking for. Is God right or left? And God's going, no, it's not right or left. It's like, just hold for a second.
Yeah. For me, I feel like there's just doors that open and doors that close, and I just walk through them. Maybe they're not the right doors.
Well, there'll be
Eventually
people.
They'll get shut, I guess.
There will be people that say, how can you say that? It's a fair question.
Oh, for sure.
How can you say that you just follow open doors whenever sometimes God's going to ask you to persevere through difficulty?
Yeah.
In your life, how do you know the difference between going through a difficult season or God trying to put blocks in your path to make you turn around? How do you distinguish the difference?
I wouldn't say like I know, oh, this door is like open or this door is closed, but I'm saying like, okay, that job I didn't get, so maybe that's a closed door.
You have no
like
control over that one.
Very specific. I don't know. I'm not.
I go through that. Like, is God asking me to turn around? or has
Yeah.
God asked me to keep going forward?
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to be the guy that turns around when something's difficult.
Exactly.
But I also don't want to be the guy that persists in my own will when God's like putting up blockers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like for me, what I've tried to do is say, like, where is peace? Do I have peace in this? Because what I found, and like this is, I mean, as far as advice is concerned, I can have peace in difficulty.
Yeah.
Like if it's hard, but I have a peace about it, like I have this peace that I only feel when I am in alignment with what I understand God to be doing. He'll allow me to make a mistake. He'll allow me to even take a job I wasn't supposed to take, or he'll like allow me to do this, or he'll allow it. He'll go, no, it's fine. You can do it if you want, but just know I can bring you back to where I want you to be. I have to operate in a level of peace. And like where you're at, that was the hardest thing for me being 22, almost 23 years old, is I wanted the plan.
Yeah.
And like on the back end of it now, what I realize is even if God would have spelled out the plan, I wouldn't have participated because it didn't sound like what I would have wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. For sure.
So it was almost like I needed to know God before I needed to know the plan.
Yeah.
I needed to know who he was, regardless of my job, regardless of what I was doing. I needed to get to know the nature of God first, because once I knew the nature of God, then it allowed me to go through the specifics as far as career and stuff goes. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
How does somebody get there? I'm just grilling you. No wrong. There's no wrong answers.
Hang out with Jordan Weaver.
I feel like that's not the right answer at all.
I don't know. Just keep walking.
Yeah.
For me, like you said, the peace thing, like I can feel when something's wrong. Even if I continue to do it, I know it's wrong.
We've had that part of our spirit or part of our nature since we were children.
Yeah.
If you ever see a little child in diapers, if they're sneaking, what they're admitting is, I know this isn't right. Like deep down. And I think when people are concerned of like, how do I know if it's peace? Like we're wired with that. We're wired to know if we're where we're supposed to be or not. There's a deep down sense of like, this is good or this is bad. And if you're climbing a mountain, somebody's climbing a mountain, they can feel great about it, even though there's still a challenge present, right? And so, like I like what you're saying, you've known right or wrong from the beginning.
Yeah.
Everyone has that element.
Yeah, not like a distinct right or wrong, but like when you're doing something, you know, if like for sure if it's wrong, you can feel it. I mean, at least I can.
I feel like there's so much gray area, and I know that's a slippery slope when you start talking about living for God and you start talking about gray areas. But here's what I mean. I think there are things that matter. I think there are things that don't matter. And I think so many times when we go to God, we're asking him for an answer about something that really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so there's not like this really strong answer from God of like, do this. My uncle actually told the story one time. He was going to buy a house. He was thinking about buying a house, or maybe he's going to keep the one he had, or maybe he's going to sell this, or maybe he's going to do this, or maybe he's going to do that. And he was praying about it. And he felt like God told him like, Randy, I don't care. I just don't care. You can do whatever you want. I'll bless you either way. And he said that was like the basis for him. That was a basis of peace of like, do I take this job or take that job? There are times where God goes, I don't care. I don't care. Take whatever. It doesn't matter. Do I go back home or do I stay here? Well, whatever you want to do. Like he's not limited to our right or left. He's saying, I want you to be someone who is content that I can handle it. Because once we believe that we can handle it, that he can handle it, we stop worrying about the rights or the left as much. I feel like I'm doing all the talking here. So like your walk with God, my personal beliefs on who God is has changed dramatically in the last 4 or 5 years. I was already pastoring a church. And so most of the conversations that we've had have been based on grace versus performance. Yeah. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of them. Yeah.
So walking into it, tell me, I mean, I can tell you what mine is, but I'm on here every time. I'm curious what your takeaway is. Like being raised the way you were, what was the operating belief system?
I wasn't raised. I mean, my family wasn't a Christian family at the start. My mom was an alcoholic, and then she got sober. She's been sober for like 15 years or something like that.
No kidding.
Which is a blessing. Changed our family. But when she got sober, she got introduced to the whole God concept and everything like that. So then she got sober and sent us to Young Life Camp and stuff like that. And then.
And how old were you at that point?
I think I was 6 or 7 when she got sober, and then middle school when we started going to Young Life camps and church camps or whatever.
And that was really the first exposure to the whole God idea.
Yeah. That I remember.
Yeah.
I think my dad was a believer, but it wasn't like I never remember praying for meals or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at 7, instantly you're just into it, or I mean, when did it become something that was personal?
I can't even tell you what I was doing when I was 7. I don't remember, but I remember in middle school, I remember going to summer Young Life camp, like getting on the bus and going and being like, whoa. and then keep going. I just liked it because it was fun. There's
Right.
diving boards and skate parks
Right.
and
Is that the Big Muddy?
zip lines. Washington Family
Yeah.
Ranch. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we had like a group of friends that all through high school, I mean, from then, like from middle school, the same group of friends went. We all slowly became believers, and then but it never was forced. Or I mean, I went to probably every high school youth group I could have gone to, but it was like never forced. It was always a.
So the hardest, in my mind, the hardest phase in a young man's life, especially, is probably driver's license. Like that phase where you're starting to get like your own independence, to having kids. Mm-hmm. Like that phase right there, I wouldn't take that phase back I would not relive that for $1 billion. Like there's nothing about it that I enjoyed. Looking back, like you're lost, you're not sure what you're doing, everything's just kind of up in the air. All of your mistakes seem like they're made right there, and you spend the rest of your life trying to undo habits that you created in that phase. It's when kids leave church. It's when kids kind of like check out on the whole God thing. Not that they're against him by any means, but they're sort of just, the world has so much to offer at that point. You're 22. You guys are coming to church. Like, it's not like your mom and dad are sitting here like, Cody, you need to be in church. It's a decision that you're making. So how do you survive that phase?
I don't know. I like the freedom. From middle school to sophomore in high school, I would say I was like that goody church kid that judged others, which I don't advise, but I was like the goody kid that never went to a party or anything like that. And then I didn't mention this, but I moved to California and went to a ski academy 10 months out of the year and kind of fell away from I didn't have my youth group or anything like that. But I still, I don't know, made decisions based on what I knew. And then, so really I didn't, from sophomore year till here, I didn't have like a church that I went to.
How did that change here? I mean, because by the time you found us, you're already full on free doing your own thing. Yeah. What changed?
When I found you guys? Well, before I found you guys, I was going to a church that I struggled with a lot, and then didn't feel peace there. And I will say this. I
know a little of that story, and we'll get into details. Yeah. But it was the questions. Here's what I stood out to me when we first started talking, is that you'd had an experience that had caused more questions. Yeah. You weren't mad. It wasn't like you were angry or raging or against it or rebellious or anything like that. It just left you with more questions. Yeah. And so that to me is a really unique trait that I'm glad that you have. That's a huge trait, because it's a curiosity. Like the people who just consistently fail in life, it's almost like they're lacking curiosity. They hear something and they either take it at face value or they reject it at face value. And every time I've ever had a conversation with you, it's like you're considering both sides and wanting to make an informed decision. Yeah. Like that curiosity will carry a person through life. It just does. So coming here after having experienced something that caused so many questions, then what?
So I was going to that church, didn't feel peace. Didn't cause it. I mean, it was good. I appreciate that time in my life, but then I'd come here and feel like peace, but like just like I was supposed to be here. Every time you gave a sermon, I was like, wow, I need to hear that. Like, I don't know, like it's okay to wrestle with God, and I'm a very realist person. I think you'd agree. Like if something makes sense, it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. And certain stories in the Bible, I think most people agree that it's hard to believe or hard to understand or stuff like that. And I would come here and I just remember hearing stuff that's like, wow, I'm supposed to be here. And then, kept coming. But I would come by myself for a long time and just sit in the back.
Really?
Like Jason. Yeah, in the summer when I first started coming here, I would come by myself a lot.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Who did you know when you were here? Like, who did you meet? Did you get to know anybody when you first got here?
No. I would come Monday nights because that's also probably why I came a lot, because I had too much fun on Sunday skiing or
right. Well, that's what it's for. Honestly, that's what the Monday thing was for. Yeah. Instead of like, you need to be in church on Sunday. We know there's people that travel.
Before I couldn't miss.
Wow. So. Anyway, but we know that people travel. We know that people have stuff they're doing, especially here when the weather's good. Like we know that people are going to be in and out. So that's what the Monday was there designed to do, is to give people a place to connect nobody has plans on Monday nights. So, came by yourself for a while. Yeah. And then
every once in a while roommates would come and stuff, but I don't know, I just loved it, so I'd come Monday night.
See, and that's a resolve. I mean, as a young person, I know I'm not as old as people would like to tell me that I am, but 37, like I'm getting there. And to see somebody that's like young 20s that's like, no, I'm going to go, even if I have to go by myself, is rare. That's that level of commitment to anything is rare.
I should come more. I mean, we're shut down now, but there's still weekends that I don't come.
What about the watching online? When did that? Because I started getting, I'm probably getting the details all messed up, but you guys were watching online too, even when you weren't here.
Yeah.
There was a group of you that watched online, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we'd watch some weekends we'd missed. We'd watch. You guys would upload it the next week or something. I listened to a lot at work.
Do you think that your generation, here's what I noticed, and you tell me if you agree or disagree. It seems like your generation doesn't fall for the hype. Let me explain what I mean. Like if we had like loud music and fog machines and all this stuff, not bashing it, it's just not our style.
Mm-hmm.
But like all the hype of like the big crowds and it seems like the 24, 25 years old and down, they're kind of almost over that. They've seen so much of the hype that it's kind of like, but what is can I say that it's almost like you guys take a more intellectual approach of like, if the Bible says something crazy, your friends, because all your friends are not necessarily church people. You've got a lot of friends outside the church.
Yeah.
So they're going to hear one verse. That's what you texted me about. There was a kid that had asked you about a verse that was just horrific.
About smashing babies.
Yeah.
Where's that at again?
Yeah. And it was there's things in the Bible that your generation is looking up now that is great because it comes to the church and goes, hey, you guys believe the Bible? Yeah. Well, it talks about babies.
Killing babies, smashing on rocks.
Yeah. And so if we don't know the answers to those kinds of things, then we're unprepared for when the world has legitimate questions.
Yeah.
Because
I felt unprepared when he asked me. I'm like, I don't know. He's like, you're a believer.
That.
What do you think about
it
this?
It doesn't say that. Yeah. And then you look it up and you're like, I'm not ready for that question yet. Yeah. But as a pastor, those are the questions I love the most because I always learn something. Never does somebody ask me difficult questions that I don't learn something. And based on who I believe God to be, there is a God of love at the base or at the bottom of every story.
Yep.
And so when you see something that's out of character, if you're willing to dig, I think they say that you're going to find whatever you're looking for. Like whatever you go into the Bible looking for, you're going to kind of find it. If you think that God's angry, you can take a verse and go, see, that verse says that he's angry, or that verse says that he's judgmental, and that verse says that the whole gospel is about making you do this, and this is how Christians are supposed to do it, and this is what believers are supposed to do. And I'm going to rant for just 1 second. I listened to a sermon today about a guy that was saying, I won't go into names or details, but he was saying that you should basically be immune to the coronavirus if your faith is big enough. and if somebody gets it who claims to be a believer, that you really don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And I'm like, how do you get to a place where you think the gospel is so much about a prescription? This is how you do everything. So when you go to the Old Testament and you read about things that were happening, sometimes they're just historical documents. There's just actual, literally history of things that happened.
Yeah.
But because you're reading it out of the Bible, the knee jerk is to go, so that's how you're supposed to do it. Well, that's not what the Bible is written to do. Yeah. It's not written to tell you everything that happened you're supposed to replicate, because Jesus died on a cross. Is that what we're supposed to do? Yeah. Jesus lived a perfect life. He never made a mistake. He never sinned. Is that a prescription? Like, think about it. If I were to tell you, like, hey,
if it wouldn't work.
I'm already too late. Yeah. It's already over for me.
Yeah.
So the ability to go to the Word and take all of it, the whole thing, and decide who we believe Jesus to be based on what the entire Word says. What has been so awesome is that as you have come to me with questions, and like your friends that are not in church, their willingness to sit down and go eat dinner and hang out and talk and just have questions.
Yeah.
It has driven me so much deeper into the Word in certain aspects that and so here's where I was going with that. With your generation, what's so interesting is that when you have answers for those kinds of questions, it goes somewhere.
Yeah. I think like talking about Young Life, I mean, that all worked for me when I was young, the hype and all the games and youth group and all that stuff. But I think once you get to like senior year of high school or whenever, or our generation, I don't know if it's specifically our generation, I think it's my age. It's like, you don't want, like they still do college Young Life camps, and maybe it worked for some people, but the games and all the stuff to draw you to Jesus, I think people just like who don't believe like want to know why am I here? Why do you guys want me here?
Hype. I was a youth pastor and grew 2 youth groups from 0 to a lot. And if you start with hype, it's like an addiction. And I would say that this is something to watch in anything, no matter what you do. If it's a certain amount works at first, and then that has to increase and increase and increase to stay sustainable, that's an addictive behavior. And so like if you start a youth group based on like, it's fun, Like, okay, well, what is fun for somebody at 13 is not going to be fun for them still at 16 or 17 or 18, which means you've got to keep pouring more and more and more until eventually you cannot maintain the level of adrenaline, you know, and same with fear. That is where fear in my mind is so obvious to see, is that people don't stay afraid. I mean, you can be scared of something for a little bit, but if you're in the room with it long enough, you're eventually going to kind of get dulled to it. Like, okay, I can't maintain this level of fear. Yeah. And so you got to add more and more, and that's how you sell things, is more fear, more fear. That's to me what I love about like my I'm going to say the relationship that I have with the Bible is that it never runs out. Like it doesn't matter what I find, there's always more and more and more in that draws me out of the hype, that draws me out of the, because I feel like I'm talking too much, but it would be hard for me to sit and listen to a sermon that didn't dig into something in the Word. That would be hard for me to listen to, because I'm basically listening to somebody's opinion, which I like to hear people's perspectives.
People are listening to our opinions right now.
Right now. But if on Sunday morning when somebody goes, who is Jesus? And I go, well, in my opinion, like, hold on a minute. Like, I don't want there to ever be a moment where my opinion is what I expect is enough for you. Because then I need to give you more opinions and more. See, all of a sudden now I'm the source. Like, then I've got to give more and more and more and more till I'm eventually out, and then you need someone else. But if it's the Word, then it's that never ending amount of even intellectual stimulus of Jesus is love, that Jesus came to alleviate fear, that everything that we do in human performance is not based in salvation. And yet, here's my new thing that God has just been on me about. He still gives us choice. So there is this relationship.
Choice matters.
The choice matters immensely. Immensely, because the knee jerk to go, well, Jesus did everything for my salvation. Jesus did all the work. Jesus died and gave me a life that I didn't deserve, and all I have to do is accept it. Great. Well, then what keeps me from going and living life that do whatever I want? Because if you did that, what you'd be saying is that your identity and your presence on this planet doesn't matter. So you might as well go pursue whatever you think makes you happy. And God is saying, no, I did all of the heavy lifting. I'm asking you to operate in it. See, because if Jesus hadn't done what he did in grace, we wouldn't be given the freedom to operate it. And I think that is where that's sort of a balance that in my life I've needed. But that's what bugs me so much when somebody goes, well, here's how to be a Christian. Yeah. No.
I think there was one sermon you gave, because the church I went to before was very much like how you perform, not how you perform, but very much rules based, and at least I felt. And then I came here, and it was like I was hearing stuff that I didn't hear there. Both sides are good. I think you gave that one sermon a long time ago about like tension from each side, like tension from the rules and then tension with grace to keep you in the middle and stuff like that. I think that's important.
I think that my relationship with the rules was weird because I couldn't follow them in the beginning. I had such a hard time. Like, I wanted to do it. I wanted to. I was raised in a pretty strict household. And like, I didn't go to parties, but I knew deep down I wanted to. Yeah. But my approach was like, since I knew I wasn't allowed to, then I was like, I don't even want to. That party's probably dumb. Like, I wouldn't even go if you invite me. But deep down, I'm like, God, this is miserable. Yeah. But I had to have something to make myself feel better. So I used my superiority, like my spiritual superiority. Same. But it was a numbing aspect. Like, I wasn't happy. I wasn't doing it because I thought it would please God. I was doing it because I thought it's what made me better than everybody else. Yeah. And they were obviously having more fun. So I had to have something, you know. But then as soon as I was free, like that 16 to kids phase of life, what I realized was I was terrible at following the rules because I didn't really love Jesus. Yeah. I didn't really know him. I didn't really know Jesus. Yeah. I'm going to say most of my youth groups. I'm going to let my parents off the hook on this one because they may not even know what I was going through, to be honest. But that by doing these rules, this is how you get God. And by doing these rules, this is how you get righteous. And by following these rules, this is how you get blessed. And by following these rules, this is how you. And what I didn't realize is that was still a selfish endeavor. Yeah. I was still being taught that, like, if I would have been a wild little heathen, I was doing that because I was pursuing what I wanted. But by following the rules and thinking it's by the rules that I'll get what I want, that it was the exact same thing. One got me applause from the people around me. You're such a good guy. Wow, what a good guy. And the other was like, oh, you're a terrible person. They were both exactly the same. Neither one of them led me to loving Jesus. I heard this conversation this week about innovation. And they said that in communist countries, innovation will never be present because you can't chain somebody to a tree and point a gun at their head and say, come up with a good idea. Good ideas are innovation is sprung from a creative mind, and the creative mind cannot operate in those restrictive type situations. And those are the ones that always get in trouble from the government. Long answer to a short question, but that's what I had to find in my relationship with God, was a freedom where I had to fully embrace. This is what our conversations have been about. How do I fully embrace the salvation that was free in such a way that gives me freedom to be innovative and love God and love who he is, even in the midst of my struggle?
Yeah.
That was the life-changing part for me.
Yeah. Same. I'm still figuring it out, but I don't know if I'll ever figure it out, but I think I'm getting the gist.
What does that look like in your day-to-day life, though? Because I see it, and it's so, in my mind, it's so obvious to see in the way that you live. You live with a certain level of freedom that most people just, for some reason, don't have. So what does that look like for you to accept a free salvation and still?
I mean, for me, when I started coming here, it was like, okay, God, I can't do it. Like,
I'm here to give up.
Yeah, I give up. It is not possible to follow all these rules, and I think that's a point, though, when you get to that.
Right.
You've said that a lot, when you get to that point where it's like, okay, I won't be good enough. I can't do this. Like,
Right.
I can't earn righteousness or anything like that. I mean, the Bible, you can, but I don't know.
Let me say it this way to clarify what I think you're saying, and you stop me. But when Jesus gave the Sermon on the Mount, what he did is he made the standard impossibly high, so much so that it made the people who were doing the best the most mad, because they're like, then that means we'll never accomplish it. Well, the guy that was already doing terrible heard it first. He heard the gospel first. It would be easy to look at the Bible and think that the worst and the poorest hear it first, or that they're preferred. Well, the reason that they are is because they're so much closer to a life that's dependent on Christ than someone who is maybe self-sufficient, self-reliant, or thinks that they're a good person. That's why it's so hard to hear a gospel that says none of it matters. You'll never, because by saying that I'm earning my righteousness, what I'm saying is God didn't have to be quite as good to save me as he did to save you. You're like, you were kind of bad, so Jesus had to do a lot. I wasn't really as bad, so God didn't have to do as much. But the gospel of Jesus says you were worse than you could have ever possibly understood in your sin in comparison to God. Maybe not in comparison to people, but in comparison to God's perfection. That means that God had to be so good and so unfair to himself to your benefit. And it's not until you get to that and you accept it like it is. How could you love God if you thought you were earning it?
Yeah.
I've heard people say that God,
If you could earn it, I would have given up a long time ago.
well, okay, so that's where I got. The joke used to be that I thought my Christian bone was broken because I thought I was under the assumption that there were people who were looking at the rules, following the rules just like you're supposed to, kind of the hyper nerd mentality of like, I'm doing everything perfect, exactly like I'm supposed to. And that those people also loved God, and that for some reason I couldn't figure it out. What I didn't realize is those people don't exist. The people that are the most like, this is how you follow the rules and this is how you do it. And good thing I'm not like you. Jesus said those are the Pharisees. That's what the Pharisees were saying, is they're still pursuing self-elevation, self-righteousness. I'm better than you. That's almost the worst, my opinion. It's almost the worst kind of sinner, because a guy that's like crawling out of a bar at closing time on his hands and knees and going home with somebody that's not his wife and not paying his bills, everybody could look at that guy and be like, that's not going very well. That's not how you do it. So many people will look at this like religious teacher that's teaching, this is how you do it. And if you'll follow me, I'll show you how to do it. So many people are going, oh, that's a standard. I can't live up to that.
Yeah. I don't know.
But
We're
then
all sinners.
Well,
That's
but
what
when you look
say.
at Jesus, think about how insulting that was when Jesus would go spend time with the guy, Exhibit A, and then Exhibit B, the people who thought they were the closest. It's like that's who Jesus is always butting heads with.
Yeah.
And so, like, here we go again. Like I said, I feel like I'm doing all the talking. But every question that you've asked has driven me further into an understanding of that.
Yeah.
Well, if that's true, then why this? Well, if that's true, then why this? You know, and like the conversations we have like with Jacob and stuff, and Mary and Levi and everybody after church on Monday nights, it feels like whatever shows up in the sermons on Sunday has been benefited from those kind of conversations. And actually, people that are not believers at all that go, well, then how is this possible?
Yeah.
How is this possible?
Yeah, I think it's important for non-believers watching this. I still struggle. I mean, I still do things. I'm like, I can't believe I did that or whatever, but I still struggle with, still to this day, believing things in the Bible like predetermination and stuff like that. Is that true? I can't remember your exact. Do you remember having that conversation? That was a really good conversation. I can't remember what you said. I was trying to explain it the other day.
Self-determinism.
Yeah.
Well, at a big scale, real quick, I will say that it's important to know that doubt was part of the whole deal.
Mm-hmm.
Doubt is an expected part of it. And what you said was you're not even living up to your own standards right now.
Yeah.
What an awesome thing to be able to admit, because that's what threw me off, is I thought there were people out there who were. I thought there were people who were out there living so good that they were somehow living up to the standard, and it made me feel worse about myself. When I got to a place where I could be around people who are like, no, I'm not living up to God's standard. I'm not even living up to my own standard. I'm trying. That's how you get left with people going, well, just do the best you can. Because do the best you can is this admission of like, I can't even do the thing I thought I was supposed to be able to do. So doubt is going to be a part of that. My favorite verse in the Bible, you remember what it is? The guy that goes, I want to believe, but help my unbelief. Yeah. It's my favorite verse in the Bible.
I pray that all the time.
There's that level of honesty that goes, I want to believe. I want to deep down believe. But it's like I said about holding somebody to a tree and holding a gun to their head and like, you better believe. That is not how you convince somebody of anything. That's how you get them to change their behavior. If you're a behavioralist, which means the behavior is the ultimate good, then you can enforce someone's behavior with force. Moralism, same thing. You can enforce moralism with force, but you cannot compel someone to love or to believe. You can't. Like if you held a gun to my head and said, "Do you believe in unicorns?" Maybe I'd say yes. Like, yeah, for sure. Yeah. But deep down, I'm like, there's no way that's true. And so, the doubt part of it is that moment of honesty, and I cannot imagine being that level of honest to tell Jesus of all people, like, listen, I know that I'm supposed to believe, and I want to. But the amazing part of that was that Jesus, I think that to me is one of my favorite things about what goes on with people inside or outside the church. That's where we're the same. People that are in the church and being honest, and people that are outside the church and being honest, what we find is we're still figuring it out. Yeah. Like we really don't. There are things that we learn all the time that cause us to go, I don't know. That seems like a hard thing to believe.
I think that's, for me, I'm a believer very much so, but there's still questions that I have or things that I'm figuring out. And I think that's important for people who are non-believers to know that Christians aren't
there's a place
perfect
for that.
People. We still
absolutely.
I think not a lot, but for me, I struggle with Christians who are so giddy uppy and how are you doing? Everything's going perfect, all that.
You know what's crazy? I know some people that are that way just by nature. They're just kind of naturally okay. And I feel guilty about that because there are times I'm just in my own head about stuff. Yeah. Back when I thought that the rules were, this is how you do it. You can't have a God concept based on how to do it without opening the door for comparison. Because you have to look and go, am I doing it right? Eventually, when the legalism, this is how you earn your righteousness, it leads to comparison, it leads to self-focus. Because if I'm like, well, are you a Christian? And you go, yeah, are you a Christian? Yeah, how many times do you go to church? 5. How many times do you go to church? See, all of a sudden what's happening is like, well, am I good? I don't know. Am I better than, And then eventually, by following the rules, this is what Jesus was saying about belief and unbelief, was that unbelief has this ability to consume and consume and consume. And no matter how much evidence is presented, they're able to go, okay, I don't understand that, but I still am not convinced. Because at the end of the day, it's not about belief or unbelief. And I think this is important for people to know, is that it's not about belief or unbelief. Because you said, and I'm 100% with you, there are times where I struggle with doubt about specific details of like, I can't get my mind around something. That's not unbelief. That is just the presence of questions, right? Unbelief, the difference between belief and unbelief is this active thing too that says no matter how much evidence I see, I cannot bring myself to surrender. Yeah. I cannot bring myself to a place where I'm willing to surrender myself, as opposed to what you're saying, which is I've surrendered, like I'm yours. But in that, there's going to be things I don't understand.
Yeah, and still things you do that you're like, it's not like we're these perfect people. I was reading this morning in 2 Samuel when David was appointed king, and he was like fighting the Pharisees. Is that right? No, Philistines. Yeah, and one of his guys got killed, and he was like, "Why God?" and mad at God, and then afraid of God. I'm like, here's this king who was appointed king by God, and has like physically talk to him and all these like things. To me, if I felt like I wouldn't question him at all. Right. Or you feel like you wouldn't, and here he is questioning him and afraid of him and mad, like, God, why'd you do this? So I'm like, it's all right if I do that.
Well, imagine like I used to think of living for God like holding on to a ledge with just my fingernails, just trying so hard. Like I remember praying for the rapture of like, God, I'm like, there's just so much sin that I struggle with. Like just hustle, hurry and get here while I feel like I'm doing good.
Yeah.
And now I think the transition would be that I feel like God's holding me in salvation. He's holding me in my salvation. I'm held in the hands of God. Like I'm resting in that. But now I've rested in that long enough now that I'm going, okay, I can settle on the idea that if I were David and I made this mistake and this mistake and this mistake, that God is still using my life to tell a story, good, bad, or indifferent, because it's all held in his hands. But that doesn't mean that my choices don't matter. That doesn't mean that my discipline isn't present. That doesn't mean that God can't use me to do things when the windows are open for opportunities, right?
Yeah.
So then it becomes my behavior does matter, but it's so secondary. It's so secondary to I see what I struggle with, but I don't worry if God's mad or happy with me. That is settled. God loves me like I've done nothing wrong. Now, because of a love that I have for him, because of this, what decisions are going to be shaped? And I think that's to me one of the things that's so vital is that people are like, oh, so God's got me here? Sweet, I'll do whatever I want. I'm like, ooh, wait a minute.
Which I think especially at my age, there's things that you're like, I don't know, still do that I don't know. At my age, I feel it's very hard.
Every age, though, has aspects of like, why is this so, I'll tell you what's crazy. I felt like about 4 years ago, God convicted me no longer about what I was doing wrong. I'm married. I've got kids. I'm pretty boring, to be honest. Like the opportunities for giant failure are there, but not like they maybe were when I was younger. So now I'm like, okay, I'm really doing, based on moralism or behaviorism, like I'm doing pretty good. Like I'm actually pretty good. And I felt like about 4 years ago, God challenged me to stop repenting for what I did wrong and start repenting for why I was doing right. See the difference? Like I used to think that I had to repent for my sins of like, oh, I did this wrong. I did this wrong. I did this wrong. Oh, I messed up. Okay, please forgive me. He's like, no, that's only a part of it. The other half of that is, what was your motivation for doing right? I'm like, uh-oh. See, that's the seed. Yeah. The seed grows two different directions. Yeah. One is like do bad to get what you want. The other is do good so that you can get blessings and all the things that you want from God so that you can get what you started out for. And what I didn't realize is it wasn't the things I was doing wrong that were causing me issues. It was the things I was doing right. And then I'd be like, okay, God, did you see that? Did you see it? Like
the heart behind them.
That's exactly it. Of like, imagine like you're saying there's opportunities for failure. Well, what failure looks like changes as you get older too.
Yeah.
You know, like I heard the coach for, I can't remember his name. I think it was Lou Holtz that said, if you want to see the nature of a man, if you want to look at the nature of a man, look at the countenance of his wife. So like as we get older, like so much of whether I'm living the way I'm supposed to or not is going to be seen more almost in my wife or my kids or my family or the environment or the culture that I'm setting for them in my own home. Well, what you're talking about at 22, 23, not being married and not really sure what you're going to do, you're talking about developing a character right now that's going to be a dome, so to speak, over your home. Like your kids are going to be raised in the environment that you've established in your home. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's so much more complicated in a sense than don't do bad things. Yeah. No, that's cheap.
For me, if I'm doing something that I know I shouldn't do, no one's going to, I mean, people can tell me it's wrong and convict me, but I mean, really it's going to come from a heart of love. Right. For God and knowing that a deeper understanding of the person of Jesus. Yeah. And why he tells you not to do that or why you're not supposed to do that.
Well, I felt like that for a long time, pass or fail was based on my actions. And the enemy is going to be right there to go like, oh, you didn't do that right. I wouldn't go tell God about that. And I tell you, one of the most pivotal points in my development was when I got to a place. I don't know if I've told you this. My salvation prayer, like when I finally gave my life to God, I've told you this.
Probably, I probably forgot.
I'd always told like, okay, God, this time I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to go to this place anymore, and I'm not going to.
We all do that. Yeah.
Puke outside the bar at 2 a.m. and hope my parents don't find out. Like I'm not, all the things. I'm not going to do this. And I kept failing. Like everything I told God I wasn't going to do, I kept doing to the point that I quit telling God altogether. I'm like, I'm just going to disappoint you anyway. Because I felt like this is how you do it, and I wasn't doing it. And so when I finally ended up giving my life to God, what I told him was like, God, all I can tell you is I'm probably going to keep doing this. I'm probably going to keep doing this. I'm probably going to keep screwing up here. And it wasn't because I was defending it. I was just aware that those were the things. What I didn't now I understand those are the things I didn't have any power over in my life. I didn't have the power to overcome those issues. And I said, but I will come to you every single day. I will spend time with you every single day. That's all I got.
Mm-hmm.
And as simple as that was, as stupid as that felt at the time, because I was like, there's no way. Instantly, it felt like everything changed in my life.
Yeah.
That moment where not when I said, I'll bring you my successes. It was, I'll bring you all my failures.
Mm-hmm.
Like imagine the commitment level of somebody who goes, I still struggle with things, but I bring those things to Jesus. He doesn't need your successes. He doesn't need you to be like, because how many times you hear people like, I'm going to do a double backflip, Jesus, for you. Like, what? What are you, like, you're going to do that for Jesus? Jesus doesn't need your backflip. He wants you to do that for you. Like, he wants you to enjoy your life. I think what he's saying is, bring me your failures and let me process through those. Because what do we have a tendency to do? Like, when we screw up or we have moral issues that we're dealing with, we have a tendency, we want to hide them and cover them up and like pretend they don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, you know, like when you're a kid and you make a mistake, you don't want to just take it right to your parents. Well, the reason you don't is a fear of consequences. But imagine a walk with God that would say, hey, that's what I'm going to bring you, God. I'm going to bring you all those failures until eventually the power that you have to deal with them overwhelms my inability to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I felt like that was the changing point in my life, is when I said, okay, God, I am a failure.
Yeah.
I don't see any way out of that. If you'll take me like that, right then, that was it.
I've been a believer for like a long time, and I feel like since I've been coming here, because you talk on that topic a lot, at least we have when we're talking. I mean, that's like, I feel like I'm still in that same sort of stage. But that's okay.
Well,
like, you know that verse that says you need milk, not solid food or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, I always, for a while before I came here, I thought that it was bad that I still need milk. I've been a believer for like 6 years and I still need milk and not solid food from God or whatever. But now it's like, okay, I'm like, okay, like that I'm there and growing and moving forward.
I don't see that though in you though, because like the questions you ask, you may not even see. Like, you don't come and talk about real shallow stuff that the world would consider this, like the ministry world.
Right, yeah.
But the stuff that you're asking about is genuine. It's coming from a genuine place. And
Mm-hmm.
I think to me, that's when you are able to be honest with God, honest enough to go, imagine this, God, I've got nothing to offer you. Nothing. I've got no successes. I've got no fame. I've got no wealth. I've got no success. I've got nothing to offer you. The God's like, no, that was the whole thing. Like, that is not a simple concept, because so many times people have something they want, they go to God to get it, and they try to offer part of it back to God as like a bribe. That's milk. That's the basic, like, okay, like God is really like, what are you going to do that makes God more God? What win, what accomplishment? And actually, in seasons of winning, when things are going well, like when you're the most confident, think in your life, when you're the most confident, you feel the least dependent on God.
Yes, absolutely.
And so what do you think God is most excited about? Like, he wants to see you do well and be excited, but he knows that when you go through a season of like, I don't know what I'm going to do for a job or a career or where I'm going to live, I think there's a part of God that's like, now he's going to get it. He's about to go to solid food right there, there. It's always those times of being unsure that bring you into that.
Yeah. And I think people are like, oh, I don't want to come to God when I'm, in a low time of life. But I think like we were made to go through those low, and I don't think it's a bad thing to turn to God when you're, going through hard times.
Well, think of the danger of that. Think of the danger of that is that I don't want to go to the King. I don't want to go to the Creator on my belly, so to speak.
Yeah.
I want to walk in. Like, do you see the danger in that?
Yeah.
And like, I know people say it all the time of like, I don't want to go to God when I'm desperate. Like, no, you've been desperate all along. Maybe this is what's let you see it, but the desperation has been there from the beginning. Like, how scary to think that people are only willing to go to God in a certain circumstance. Like, I'm only going to come back once I've got my stuff figured out. And that's, but that's another legalism gospel, is like, get yourself cleaned up. You better do better so that God will accept you, so that God will love you, so that God, and you know what's crazy is when you take that to people who teach legalism, they go, that's not what I say. Well, that's not what I meant. Everybody says the same thing, but you know the difference. So somebody is teaching a how-to gospel, you feel it. Instead of like, well, I don't want to go to God until I've completed the religious standard. And the gospel of Jesus was like, there was a lady that got drugged in front of Jesus naked, caught in adultery. And Jesus, in essence, ran the Pharisees off and said, I love you. I love you. Like, your sin is forgiven, and go, and I got you. Now go make better choices. Go make better decisions and see what I can do in your life. What part of that did she earn? What part of that was like, I don't want to go to God when I'm desperate? The Pharisees, they went to Jesus, but when they got there, they're like, do you see what we did? Do you see what we've earned? Do you see why you're kind of lucky to have us? And Jesus is going, you don't see what the gospel is. If you think you bring anything in, you don't understand the gospel. And so, like, in that regard, when people are like, well, I just feel like I'm at the lowest point of my life and I can't do it, I can't, like, that is such a great on-ramp because, like I said, it's the poor and the weak that see it first. Because if I said you have to give up everything to follow God and you had nothing, you'd be
Easy.
like, fine. Yeah, no problem. So I think that, to me, if there was a message to be pushed out from here, I hope it's that. I hope it's the, like, I am confident bringing God my failures because I had nothing to offer anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, just being aware of it. So your friends, you're talking about, like, the people that you hang out with. You don't hang out with just strictly church people, which I love. I love that. I would encourage anybody who's living for God, like, don't just hole up in a safe little cocoon of an echo chamber.
Yeah.
How often does stuff like that come up? I mean, in your day-to-day life, how often? Because people know the stance that you've taken. Like, obviously, they know who you are. They know what you believe. In your circle and your friends, how often does that come up?
How often does God come up? I mean, pretty often. When we were in Europe, it came up twice, and I'm not like someone who, like, I mean, if someone asks me if I'm a believer, I'll say I'm a believer, but I'm not like an evangelist or anything like that. But it comes up for sure, and I feel like, I mean, sometimes the most like things that drive me to read the Word and stuff like that are when I get asked questions that I don't know, especially. But it comes up a lot. I mean, like, oh, you're a believer. What do you think about this? Or what do you think about gays or stuff like that? Yeah, it comes up a lot.
I've said that I think maybe I'm not as good as I should be about bringing it up. Like, I know that one of the standards or the expectations is like, hey, if you're going to be a believer, you got to get out there and make disciples. And, like, I'm so passive about it. But it seems like I could be talking about that light right there. And in my life, every now and then it just comes up. Like, I can't avoid it. Like, I can't keep people from bringing it up, sometimes because they know what I do. But it seems like the constant pushback is, before I could get to that, explain to me the hatred of God. It seems like that the concept of God that kind of hovers over the Bible is that there are certain people that God hates. Would you agree with that? Like, that's the thing that causes people to push back?
Yeah. I was in Europe, and Costa Rica, not Europe. And I walked into the hostel, and this girl, we were talking, and then she asked me what my Instagram was, and at the time I actually took this off, but I had something about Jesus or something like that. She's like, oh, you're a believer, we can't be friends. Yeah. I'm like, whoa, why? And she's like, my brother's gay. I'm like, no. And we became like really good friends for the month that I was there.
Right.
So I think, I mean, it's like there's so many views on Christians on what they believe and how they treat people and stuff like that.
Do you feel like right now, with everything up in the air, I feel like I've kind of been living inside the church since it started. Honestly, we've been doing these kind of stuff and the sermons and stuff. And so I don't know that I've got as much of a pulse on it as I normally would. Do you think people's confidence being rattled has kind of created a new interest in the whole concept of God?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, for sure. When I was in Europe, this is before the whole COVID thing, but we were there pretty close to when it started. It was probably there when we were there, but I had a friend ask me, he said, you're a believer, right? And he's like, sometimes I lay awake at night and like wonder what's there after I die and stuff.
Yeah.
And that was like a crazy question. I'm like, wow, that's cool. I think there's a lot of people that question God and like maybe talk to God that aren't believers that we don't know about, especially in times like these when they lose their job, don't have income coming, can't pay rent, stuff like that. So
it feels like to me, and I hope based on who you are, I know there'll be people that watch this just because they know you, and I would love for them to hear this, that so many times people are resistant to the concept of God because they don't want to get recruited into something. They don't want to lose their freedom. They don't want to lose their individual identity. And like, they don't want to sign up for anything. So instantly they kind of put up the guards of like, up. I've seen some of your people act crazy.
It's not about that.
For some reason, the Westboro Baptist Church, because it's I could not be more opposite of them in my beliefs, right? But I will say this. It feels like that the average person today wants to clear out sort of a safe spot, like a neutral side. Like, I'm not going to agree to yours. You don't have to agree to mine. Let's just find a neutral spot and consider it. I think this is going to cause an explosion in the intellectual concept of who Jesus is, that they will find a place where they can observe, not committing to anything. And what's crazy to me about Jesus is that when people set up those sort of like, I just want to meet, I'm not saying I agree or disagree, I just want to meet, how often Jesus is like,
Perfect.
great, let's
Don't
do
have
that.
to give it up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And how many people don't ever really get fixed? I'm going to say fixed from the things that the legalism approach would tell you need fixed. They have just this exploding, amazing relationship with Jesus because they're like, I don't know how controversial I want to get here because it is live. I can't take it back. But it's almost like I think there will be people who struggle with sin issues that get into heaven without question because they were leaning so fully on who Jesus was, and that Jesus is kind of like, if you think about who Jesus is, more like a path than a portal, that he starts here, you're in. Like when you accept Jesus, like you're in, but then it's a path of like moving forward. And as you progress, it's like aging. Like I would never let my 8-year-old daughter drive us to town yet, but she's on a path. And by the time she's 16, by the time she gets to that point, there are going to be freedoms that come with that. I say that to say this. When people just want a safe place to observe Jesus, I think Jesus loves that. I actually think he prefers that. And then as they keep going, there may be things down the road that God goes, hey, this is not your best opportunity. There are things that you could be doing better. I mean, obviously in your life, in my life, every phase of life, I discover this new area that I hadn't gotten to yet. So I think that God does that for me. And I think that God does that for you. Why would I not assume that God does that for somebody who has a different sort of an issue than mine, right? So when I accepted Jesus at whatever age I finally got it right, he didn't forgive me. This is kind of the mind-numbing part. He didn't forgive me for what I had done up until that point. When I said, Lord, I need you in my life, I'm a failure, he knew every struggle that I was going to have moving forward. And at that point, he said yes. And so even though it's a surprise to me, like, God, why am I this way? It may be a surprise to me, but it's not a surprise to him. Like where you're at 23 and the stress that comes with like 22, almost 23. But the stress that comes with that of like trying to figure it out, it's a stress to you, but God's not stressed by that. Like he knew that in advance, and that there's a love and a grace and a mercy available for that you didn't even know you were going to need yet.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine being where I'm at with trying to start a business and, trying to figure out life and stuff like that without a God in my life. And I think
absolutely,
I think a lot of people all have something like deep down that they feel like they're missing something, or whatever.
right.
I was on the beach with someone in Costa Rica, and they were telling me like, oh, they don't believe in God, but they feel like there's something else out. Like they feel like they're missing something or something like that. And I think if most people would be more interested in God if they didn't have the concept that they have to give up all this stuff to believe or to learn or whatever.
That's what I love. That's what I love about this format right here. That's what I love the most about it. Somebody in the privacy of their own home can just observe and make a decision for themselves. They're not going to get recruited. We're not going to make them wear some T-shirt with their name tag like, you're in, let's get to the program. Like that there's a safe place to go, well, why this? Well, why that? And so what I'm hoping moving forward is I want people to start filing in through here that don't believe the way that I believe.
Yeah.
I want somebody to come and go, I'm absolutely not into that. Here's my questions, because I love kind of clearing the table, neutral territory that says, let's just consider what's out there. So
I think what people are drawn to, I think a lot, if people came to church and didn't think that they had to give everything up, I think they would be drawn to like the community and stuff like that.
Right.
And then
well, and I think that's the long game. Like in my mind, I'm 37 years old, and if I live this long, over the next 30 years, that we establish so solidly a safe place where that by going to Shiloh, you're going to have a safe place to observe and make a decision without any level of buy-in to begin with. Like when we say you can belong before you believe.
Yeah.
I would love to think that there are people that may go to church here for 10 years without making any sort of a commitment just because they're interested in what they're seeing as far as Jesus is concerned. And so, in my mind, that's why you're such an asset to me, to the kingdom, because you are so okay with who you are. You're so okay with being around people that don't believe the way that you believe. And I don't know anybody that feels, obviously we don't have a ton of mutual friends, but like that's something to know you is to know that it's safe. Like they can say like, I don't believe that. And they're not going to be shunned from the Cody Winters aura, so to speak. Like you're fine with people who are just sort of figuring it out.
Yeah. I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
We're all still figuring
How
it out.
awesome. The amount of freedom in that to be able to go, how would you have it figured? I don't even have it figured out. That's not the expectation. That's not the standard. That's what makes me nervous when somebody tells me they do. When somebody's like, I'm the guru, and if you come to me, I'll write a book. I'm like, So you're not admitting that you're still struggling. You're not admitting that you're still going through.
Yeah.
Like it's not. I'm not going to go any further on that. You know what I'm talking about. But I want to get to a place where whatever is honest can be visible, because eventually what people will see, everybody here is like this arrow that's pointing to Jesus. We all make up this big arrow that kind of points to Jesus. And then when people come in and go, I'm not into that, he's okay with that. Like throughout the entire part of the Bible, like Nicodemus was a teacher and he met with Jesus at night because he was like, I don't want to make a commitment. I don't want to make a commitment because it could cost him his position, right? So he comes to Jesus, and Jesus was honest with him, but Jesus also met him in the middle of the night. Like Jesus would have had absolutely every right in the world to go, hey, if you want to have a conversation with me, let's do it in public. Make it professed,
Yeah.
And Jesus was like, middle of the night? Sure. Why not? Let's have a conversation.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people, at least my age, that say, oh, I've done too much stuff. I can't be a believer or anything like that. But that is like, Paul killed believers before he was a believer, and then he became a disciple, right? So
how awesome. Two things, and I don't keep you all day, but two things in my mind. If you think that what you did was so bad that God is somehow done with you, it's two things. We don't understand how the gospel works, because the worse that you are, the more you're able to see God's goodness. I mean, if you thought you were good, then you didn't think that God had to be all that good to save you. What's crazy is when somebody goes, I've done too much wrong. I've messed up for too long. What they don't understand is they're that close. They are actually the closest of anybody on this planet. When you think, I don't know if God could be good enough to save me, and then you discover that he is, and he wants to, and that's his desire, those people in my mind make the very best followers, because they're like, oh, I thought I was done. I was there. Like, I thought I was done. I thought I had lied to God so many times. Like, if somebody tells me a lie once, I'm like, that's not cool. But like the second, third, fourth, fifth, eventually I'm like, okay, you know what? We're done here. But I was lying to God over and over and over again, and meaning it. Like, I would tell him what I thought I was going to do, and I kept failing, that I thought eventually God was done with me. And so to think that God was patient with me in that's how I began to love God. Of like, he was even there for me. He was even there at a time where I thought I didn't deserve it. That's what starts to cultivate a love. So when somebody goes, I don't know, I've done too much wrong, like, oh, there's a love of God that is like,
or I'm too naughty to go to church or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the other part about putting things online with people that are not necessarily pastors or in the ministry, is there's going to be something that we talk about at this table with someone that people hear that and they go, that's what I thought. Okay, that's where I'm at. Like, the connectivity may happen before there's a commitment. Because honestly, like, by the time you walk into a church, you sort of made a commitment.
Yeah.
You're already sort of committed.
By sitting forced to go.
Right. Yeah. It's a promise to a wife or something. But what's amazing is when you're able to watch it online or connect to something online, hopefully it starts causing deeper questions. Like, it causes people to go, okay. So then by the time they come through the doors, this might be like their 10th step in a spiritual journey towards like just wanting answers. Yeah. But this is, I think that's why that's important. And to know you is far more important to your crew than to know me. Because whatever God's doing in your life, they're going to recognize. Yeah. Like, people thank God people didn't know me when I was in college up here. They just see me as this. But when they see somebody going through the transition, that's the gospel that they're gonna perceive. I think that's.
It's not like I think a lot of people think like, oh, you're a believer, then you just like transform right away.
Yeah, a portal
like,
instead of a path.
Do these bad things you don't say anymore. Right. How does he? I mean, I've literally had this happen. Oh, he's a believer. Why would he do that? I'm like, that's terrible. Why did I do that or whatever? But
dude, that was the worst part. Like, you're a Christian. Why'd you do that? Yeah. And you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not defending it. I'm not saying it's right. I don't know why I'm this way. Yeah. It sucks when they're right. And I think that's what the how-to, because like if I said, I'm a baseball player and here's how you hit a ball, and then I miss it, then they're like, so you're not a baseball player? Yeah. And by my own standard, I'm sitting there like, I guess not. I guess I'm not.
Yeah, I think the brokenness is important for non-believers to realize that, like, we're just at least in my eyes, I'm just as broken as they are. That's why I'm here.
Well, imagine an honesty that says, I'm with you. I don't think that's something I want to continue in my life, but I've had no luck doing it myself. So that's where the term hypocrite comes from, is from people who said, Christians don't do that. And they're like, well, I do that. Yeah. Oh, then I guess you're not a Christian. Well, then they're like, well, what do you do? Like, it's instantly, it's that comparison thing of legalism. Well, I'm better than you. No, I'm better than you. Well, and how many times does somebody walk into the church and go, I know all these people and I'm better than all of them? Well, if it's based on how to, that person can leave and feel good about themselves and never even consider the who Jesus was. It writes Jesus out of it altogether. But by saying, like, I don't know. There are things in my life I don't know. I'm with you. I'm with you on this one. I wish that wasn't a part of it. But that's why I need Jesus. At least it's honest. At least it gives somebody the opportunity to go like, okay, well, at least agree or disagree. At least I can see that you're being honest to what you say you believe. Because that was, aren't you a preacher's kid? Yes, I know. I get it. I'm a screw up.
Yeah.
But the freedom that I feel now is like, hey, I'm living a life I couldn't have had on my own.
Yeah.
You know, and like the longer you go, the more you get to love Jesus, and the more you actually begin to love Jesus, then the easier it all gets.
And you probably wouldn't be where you are today without those times.
Oh man. Well, and it's okay. So here, philosophical question here. Tell me what you think. Because Paul said, like, am I better because I messed up? Because he said, like, where I messed up, God's mercy is on display. So does that mean that the messing up was good? He's like, no. So and I don't have a good answer for you. That's just where it kind of gets into philosophy.
Oh,
like,
gosh.
but I'm not saying that the things I did that were bad were good. Because if I said, I got here because of the things I did bad and God saved me, now I'm here, I think that's where it gets to the all-encompassing, like, I don't know. Maybe I could have been here. Maybe those mistakes have given me a better understanding of where I'm at, but I think that
maybe you didn't have to make
it didn't require me making them.
Yeah. I'm not a guy who digs down into stuff like that too much, but I do know that some of the strongest believers I know did go through times like that and stuff.
Right. Sometimes it's whatever it takes for a person to get to a place where they go, I have nothing to offer. Nothing. I can't walk in with my head up. I can't earn it. Back to David, Mephibosheth. He was supposed to be killed. He was actually had a death sentence because he was a descendant of Saul. And when they found him, he was crippled in both feet. Remember, they dropped him. And when he came into the presence of the king, they said he carried him in. And the king said, I'm going to make you family. And he goes, what am I but a dead dog? And it's so weird because all those thousands of years earlier, God was giving us a description of what it means to be carried in front of the king. Not walk in and go, you got me. But to be carried in and go, I have nothing to offer. Who am I but a dead dog? And David said, no, because of the love I have for you, because of his relationship with Jonathan, the Mephibosheth's dad, because of a love I have for you, your family, and you didn't do anything to earn it. It's based in your identity, not in your actions. And I'm going to bring you in as part of the family. I'm like, man, when I got to a place where I understood that I was carried in, everything got easier.
Same.
Okay. Man, I appreciate it.
Are we out of time?
I don't know. Yeah, seems like a good stopping point.
For sure.
Appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, thanks.
That was great. I feel like I talked the whole time.
I'm not that good at talking.
No, it's perfect.